a critical role in the furtherance of the East African objectives. Honorable Speaker, the Fourth Assembly of the East African Legislative Assembly, which commenced on the 18th December 2017, will come to an end on the 17th December 2022. Consequently, member states are expected to elect members of the Assembly within 90 days before the end of the term of the ongoing Assembly. Honorable Speaker, it is in this regard that the National Assembly and the Senate respectively resolved to establish a joint parliamentary select committee on election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly. Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee was established on the 13th and the 18th October 2022 by the National Assembly and the Senate respectively to undertake the functions. And Honorable Speaker, the committee comprises of the following members of the National Assembly. The co-chair from the National Assembly is the Honorable Wanjiku Muhia, MP. The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, CBS MP. The Honorable Sabina Chege, CBS MP. The Honorable Dr. John Kanyuthia Mutunga, MP. The Honorable Daniel Epuyo Nanok, MP. The Honorable Francis Sigei Kipiegon, CBS MP. The Honorable Ruth Adhiambo Busia, MP. Honorable Speaker, the members of the Senate in the Joint Select Committee are co-chair Senator Daniel Gitonga Manso, EBS MP. Senator Raphael Shimera Munzagu, MP. Senator Commissioner Joyce Koech Korir, MP. Senator Miraj Abdularam, MP. Senator Chute Mohamed Said, MP. Senator Joseph Githuku Kamau, MP. And Senator Beatrice Akinyi Ogola. Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee held its first meeting on the 25th of October 2022. And Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Rule 4 of the East African Legislative Assembly elections, the presiding officers, that is the clerk of the National Assembly, the clerks of the two houses, notified the public, Honorable Speaker, via Gazette Notice number 13031, that was dated on the 26th October 2022. In this, an advertisement was placed on both the Standard and the Daily Nation newspapers on the 26th October 2022, inviting Honorable Speaker interested and qualified persons to apply within a period of 7 days from the date of the notice. Honorable Speaker, at the close of application, that was on the 2nd November, the presiding officers noted that although the total number of applications received was 348, a number of other applicants, Honorable Speaker, had submitted multiple applications with the same applicant submitting, Honorable Speaker, up to even 4 applications. Honorable Speaker, on 7th November 2022, the presiding officers made a pre-nomination briefing to the party leadership of both houses of parliament. And Honorable Speaker, on Wednesday, the 9th November, the presiding officers received nomination documents from candidates of political parties and candidates of independent or political parties. Honorable Speaker, a total of 69, as indicated in the report, appeared before the presiding officers, out of whom, Honorable Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza Alliance Coalition presented 15 candidates, and the Azimio la Umoja One Alliance Coalition presented 12 nominees, while, Honorable Speaker, 42 were candidates of independent political parties. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, Pursuant to Rule 12 of the rules, the presiding officers gave the public an opportunity to inspect the nomination papers and lodge any complaints they may have had with respect to the candidates' nominations. Honorable Speaker, the inspection was done on Thursday the 10th and Friday the 11th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. as presented, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, at the close of the nomination on Friday the 11th, the presiding officers forwarded the names and nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates to the Joint Select Committees for consideration and complaints lodged during the inspection days. Honorable Speaker, I also present observations that have been made by the Joint Select Committee that the Joint Select Committee observed that the East African Legislative Assembly elections assigns crucial roles in the election process to the presiding officers instead of the Joint Select Committee. And Honorable Speaker, the Joint Committee observed that some of the candidates did not comply with the advertisements in the Daily Nation and the Standard newspapers and the Kenya Gazette of the 26th October. Most of the applicants, Honorable Speaker, did not comply with the provisions of the Election Act as regards qualification of members of parliament, either through a political party or through independent party. Honorable Speaker, based on the aforementioned observations, the Joint Select Committee therefore recommends enhancement to the East African Legislative Assembly elections. One observation is that to enhance the role of the Joint Select Committee, and Honorable Speaker, the Joint Select Committee also made an observation that a framework should be provided for formal campaigns to the candidate. Honorable Speaker, it is now my pleasant duty and privilege on behalf of the Joint Select Committee to present the report on the election of members to the YALA for your consideration. I thank you and I ask Senator Commissioner Joyce Korir to second.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I want to second the report of the Joint Committee, having read by my very able colleague, Honorable Beatrice. Honorable Speaker, having been a member of this committee, we went through a number of meetings in terms of checking on a number of issues that were to assist us in terms of getting the members to this Legislative Assembly as by the EAC treaty that was signed among the nation involved. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there are a number of issues that committee recommended, and one of them was to amend the East African Legislative Assembly elections to enhance the role of the Joint Select Committee. Honorable Speaker, Honorable, my colleague in the report touched on the issue of the members who applied, and the membership that applied indeed was 348, others having made multiple applications, and having the presiding officers having checked the applications, they found that there were 287. Remember, Honorable Speaker, this was done by the presiding officers, and the Joint Committee was not involved. So those are some of the amendments that we also felt as a committee, that the procedure should involve the members of the Joint Committee from the onset, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that these members who have applied for East African Legislative Assembly Honorable Speaker, a number of them have been our colleagues in this in the port houses. We've interacted with a number of them. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, I know the key players on these appointments are the parties, Honorable Speaker. So having been given the list of 15 members from the one of the parties, and the other party is giving us a number of, giving us 9 membership, Honorable Speaker, where we are supposed to have 4 and 5 approval. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is upon the members now to check upon the entire list and come up with the members whom they feel they will represent this nation in the East African Assembly. I beg to support. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community and Rule 13.5 of the East African Legislative Assembly election of members of the Assembly rules, the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of the East African Legislative Assembly, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 15th November 2022. Members, you may now make your contributions. Senator Ojienda.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the motion. Mr. Speaker, the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community in 1999 is an important treaty, and the treaty as contemplates, Mr. Speaker, sir, that within the frame of the treaty, right from the customs union, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there shall be a common market, a monetary union, and finally a federation. I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you have served as Minister for East African Community. And I know that you, like anyone else, is yearning to ensure that we complete the 5 stages and that we see a federation for East Africa. Granted, Mr. Speaker, sir, that every region of the 7-member union, Mr. Speaker, sir, has challenges. Mr. Speaker, sir.
What is your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Apologies to my neighbor, the good Senator of Kisumu. But Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 111, limitation of debate, that the Senate may, on a motion made by any senator in accordance with this standing order, impose a limit in respect of debate of any particular motion or bill by allotting a limited period of time for such debate, by limiting time during which senators may speak in such a debate, or by imposing such limitations. The reason I do this, Speaker, is that you have already allocated 5:30 a time to do the adjournment motion of Senator Enokio Wambua. It is now 4:22. We have to do this motion, and we have a further motion, Mr. Speaker, providing for the election day, specific election day on Thursday, which is before. All that we need to compress and be concluded before that 5:30, Mr. Speaker. That being the case, Mr. Speaker, I wish to request that you limit debate to the members. If members can agree, actually, that maybe 2 or 3 only on one side, 2 or 3 on the other, but then again, because I want to be specific on time, you limit it to maybe 3 minutes per person, Mr. Speaker. I'll really appreciate. I want to ask Senator Medu to second me on that.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I second. Honorable Senators, I now put the question. The debate on this motion be limited to 2 minutes per 2 minutes. 2 minutes per senator. Honorable Senators, I think the move of the motion has actually indicated that you'll have adequate time to debate on this matter. So let us limit it to 2 minutes per senator. Senator Ojienda, I'm yet to conclude on this matter. Okay, I have put the question and we are yet to vote on it. So as many as of that opinion say aye. As many of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. 2 minutes per senator. Professor, proceed.
Let me just spend my time wisely. The reason why I seek to contribute on this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, is because, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've previously served as president of the East African Law Society. And I was part of the drafting of the protocol of the Customs Union. I contributed professionally, and I've been part of the process. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I wanted to say is that the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the arms contemplated by the treaty, the summit, the ESCJ, and now IALA, is a very important organ. I was just going to urge members to ensure that they vote for competent people to represent this region in that assembly. I have today, Mr. Speaker, sir, received a lot of interest from individuals who want to go to that assembly, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I know very, very competent ones, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we shall vote for, Mr. Speaker, sir. I urge, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this House, in considering who to vote for Winnie Odinga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Class, can you put the timer on so that we limit time to 2 minutes? The Honorable Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, very quickly, I wanted to make this point that, Mr. Speaker, my small experience from the Pan-African Parliament is that when Kenya stands to speak, people want to hear what Kenya is about to say. Mr. Speaker, the delegation that has gone there has represented us very well. Mr. Speaker, my point is that the people we are going to choose to go and sit in that East African Parliament, they must be the very best of us. And they must be people who have experience, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't want people who are going there and then they are going to start learning how even to address the House. Mr. Speaker, that's an international, it's a regional parliament. And I'm going to urge very, very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that we send people who have already served in this Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. These people will go there and give us good quality debates, good quality representation, worthy of the title Republic of Kenya. Let us not send people who have no experience just because they have political connection. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, reading through the report, the committee has recommended that the rules needs to be amended so that we have clarity on the role of the joint committee, because the rules talk about presiding officers. So I hope the relevant committee will take it up and make sure that the rules are amended appropriately. Also, the provision on the withdrawal of candidates is not clearly stipulated. The committee has recommended that that be looked at. Mr. Speaker, many people have talked about competence, but I think one important qualification is that those who come near the borders should be considered. For example, those who come near the border, like Victoria and Tanzania, or Western and Uganda, and those who come from northern part of Kenya with Somali, those who come from Turkana with the southern Sudan, they must be considered because those are people who go through challenges which needs to be addressed under the framework of IALA. So I recommend that we vote for individuals who come from regions which have challenges with the borders and with the East African community. I also encourage members, please vote according to your own conscience. We are told that some people will go to a PG and a list will be given to them. I think this country is democratic. Let people vote freely and vote for the people they want to vote for, and not to be coerced to vote for particular individuals because the party has given them direction to do that. We must exercise democracy.
Senator Onsotsi, your time is up, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable Senator Veronica Duarte. Your microphone is off, Senator.
There is a problem. Okay, now that's okay. Mr. Speaker, sir, I first want to thank the Joint Committee for the good job they have done and presenting the report that has been brought to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, all the candidates who have been shortlisted in that report should be considered as equal and qualified to serve and fit to serve within the East African Legislative Assembly. The fact that a candidate has not served in any parliament before should never act as a bar towards them ascending to the East African Legislative Assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would urge members to vote guided by their own conscience, knowing that the list of the members who should be voted in to serve in that assembly should, number one, have a diversity within the Kenyan communities. It should also take into account gender considerations. It should be balanced in terms of gender. And I would actually encourage the members to consider this time around accepting women more, much more women than men, because all the other parliaments have more men than women. Thank you.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuunga mkono ripoti ambayo imeletwa bungeni ya uteuzi wa wagombea wa ubunge wa East Africa Mashariki. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hakika wote ambao wameteuliwa ni watu ambao wana tajriba, lakini ni vizuri tuchague watu ambao watakuwa na uwezo wa kusongeza mbele bunge hili la East Africa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia katika zile taasisi za bunge za East African Cooperation, mahakama ya East Africa, Mheshimiwa Spika, imefanya maamuzi ambayo yamesaidia masuala ya haki za binadamu na masuala ya human rights katika maeneo yetu kwa sehemu kubwa kuliko yale ambayo yameweza kufanywa na bunge hili. Na yote imetokamana na masuala kwamba wale wanaokwenda kutuwakilisha ni watu ambao wanakwenda kutafuta kazi, sio watu wanaokwenda kuangalia yale masuala ambayo yanaangaziwa na bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimebahatika kusafiri kwenda Zanzibar na Pemba mwezi uliokisha, na nikaona kwamba kuna mambo mengi ambayo bunge hili linaweza kuangazia ili kurahisisha biashara baina ya Kenya na Tanzania, ama biashara baina ya nchi tatu nchi 7 za Afrika Mashariki, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo wale ambao tutawachagua, Mheshimiwa Spika, siku ya Alhamisi, lazima wawe ni watu ambao wana maono ya kupeleka bunge hili mbele, sio kutafutia watu kazi. Hata kama mtu ndio mara yake ya kwanza kuchaguliwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini ikiwa ana maono ya kupeleka bunge hili mbele, anafaa kupewa kazi hiyo. Kuna wengi ambao wamechaguliwa na Mheshimiwa katika bunge hili la Senate mwaka huu hawajakuwa maseneta, lakini tumeona zile kazi ambazo wameweza kufanya zinaridhisha kwamba wamechaguliwa kusaidia nchi hii kwenda mbele. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Tawa Matinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also like to support. We know that when we talk about East African community, the thoughts of Pan-Africanism are allied. I would wish to ask the members also when they go to elections that they should look, and I want to repeat this, look at people who will be able to put the face of Kenya in that parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all members in this committee who assisted me as a co-chair to make this report. And Mr. Speaker, my apologies to the House. I was not there, and Senator Beatrice Ogola was very kind to move it on my behalf. Mr. Speaker, I had to go to my county having a visitor in the name of Bill Gates, who one time when in Seattle, going as Parliament, I visited his office, made an invitation, and luckily he came to Kenya, and therefore my apologies to the House. The main issue in this particular report we found could be ideal for consideration in future. First of all, whatever happens to a single state happened to all member states. And secondly, one time when this process was abused by the state of Kenya, there was a court case at the Eastern African Court of Justice. And I was lucky to be one of the lawyers there. And the court directed and ended up with what we have now. That's why we have to choose out of three. Instead of select, there has to be an election, Mr. Speaker. But then we have to balance gender, youth, and also continuity, Mr. Speaker. One of the problems with the Kenyan election has been that we remove everybody, and then we have no institutional memory in Yela. So I'll urge members while making a vote and supporting this to look at that consideration so that we can have continuity in the Eastern African Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the report. And I would love, Mr. Speaker, from the very onset to indicate to the House that the East Africa Legislative Assembly has attracted a good number of people who are, I believe, all qualified. From the report, Mr. Speaker, 348 people applied, 69 were nominated, 9 are required to be elected tomorrow. I believe, Mr. Speaker, this House will be capable of picking from among the list that we've been given people who are qualified who will push the agenda of Kenya in the East Africa Legislative Assembly. I urge the members from this House to do that which is objective tomorrow when it comes to voting, so that we send the team on Thursday. Pardon me, Mr. Speaker. The election will be on Thursday, I believe. And Mr. Speaker, I was giving an indication that I urge this House to send to the East Africa Legislative Assembly people who are qualified to advance the interest of this country. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude on my support to the report, the committee has proposed that a framework for formal campaigns be placed in the 2017 rules for this particular position. And I urge that the House, once it is done with the election process, can also formulate a process where candidates can be able to have formal processes to conduct their campaigns, so that they make it easy, so that we also can get an opportunity to interrogate whatever they are seeking to go and do for us as a country in the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Atai haifanyi. Thank you. Fine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion. And I want to urge the members to make sure that we actually appoint or rather vote for the right candidates because it is important that whoever we send to East Africa, they will represent the face of the country. And there would be people who are experienced, committed, with a constitutional memory, whereby they would be able to move the IALA forward. Mr. Speaker, again, it's important to give opportunity to all the applicants because there should not be barriers whereby somebody, if it's connected to any political affiliation or any political kingpin, for them to be denied the opportunity. It is important if somebody qualifies, we are all grown-ups or they are all grown-ups, once you are over 18, you have your own life. So people should not be denied opportunities or their dreams to be shattered because simply they are connected to a certain politician. So please, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the House to make sure they give the opportunity to everybody who deserves the opportunity to be able to serve in IALA, Mr. Speaker. I think with those few remarks, I support. Thank you.
Senator Chirangi.
Mr. Speaker, it's working. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this report, and I think in the interest of the House and many issues that have been raised. One is with the Committee on ESC. I think there is a committee that concerns itself. They need to pick it up, some of these recommendations going into the future, so that we can ensure the process of IALA become less tedious within the law. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to, I've had my colleagues from the minority side, as the One Kenya Alliance. I think he just left the chamber, Mr. Speaker. He is alleging that, that members of Kenya Kwanza at some point will be given who to vote for. My question is simple. When you look at this report, which is the worst democracy and corruption, Mr. Speaker, if you can bring your own daughter to be elected to IALA or your own son? Winnie Odinga wants to be an IALA member simply because of the second name, just like Kalonzo Musyoka's son. They are here. They should stop lecturing us about democracy where they practice the worst form of democracy and corruption. If it comes to voting, I will not allow cronyism and nepotism to go through, because that is not the spirit of this republic, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the list of Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker, it is only hustlers, people who are from bottom up, that we have nominated to go to IALA to represent this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the One Kenya, as the One Kenya Alliance, to stop peddling lies to Kenyans that they are democratic. They are not. They are corrupt and nepotic and cronyism, and we shall not allow that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Hazana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, every time I rise, the expectation is that I'll be speaking for the marginalized people in this country. But I want to highlight, as regards the IALA nomination list, that the most marginalized group of people in this country turns out to be the youth. And it is very unfair for a sitting member of the Senate to stand up and say that experience is required to have sat in Parliament before for you to participate in the East African Legislative Assembly. I want to strongly refute that, and I hope that this House, each member will interrogate themselves and remember that these very youth who are seeking for these positions have no experience, and next time could turn out to be their own children. I believe that whoever we are going to send to the East African Legislative Assembly should be someone who is knowledgeable, someone who is eloquent, someone who has a vast knowledge of the East African affairs and matters, and somebody who understands the importance of discipline and aggressiveness and the value that the East African community brings when we have a common goal that will consolidate our interests. Senator Cherargei, please stop interrupting.
Senator Azena, do not be disrupted by another senator. Leave it to me.
Thank you.
I'll protect you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For Senator Cherargei, I believe Honorable Speaker should be the first to speak about the young people getting opportunities more than those who have experience. Having been a young member of the Senate in the last term as a young naive boy from the hills of Nandi, and the opportunity bestowed upon him turned him into the brave man who is always in.
Honorable Senator, your time is up. Senator Boni Kalole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to members and I've agreed with them that we need competence, proven competence at Yala. You and I have been there in an executive role, and you know the critical role played by this assembly, and countries like Rwanda and Uganda bring very good members of parliament. Let me tell you, I've listened to Senator Osotsi and I sympathize with him. He's saying that a parliamentary group meeting that is going to discuss this matter should not be entertained. Poor him. Senator Osotsi, in November 2006, Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o and 10 other leaders belonging to the Rainbow Coalition took President Mwai Kibaki to the East African Court of Justice. And the ruling was given in Anyang' Nyong'o's favor that no political party within a coalition can be locked out. That was the ruling, November 2006. So heads of coalitions must sit together and agree so that the members we take to East Africa, WIPA must be there, Jubilee should be there, ODM should be there on that side. And on our side, we should reflect our composition. And this is why I want to urge ODM, if you have not held consultations with your colleagues, you're going to give us problems. We'll be ruled out of order by that court. So we need that tomorrow's example by us be seen as a value adding. The only thing I'll request is, because I'll be voting for you, I'll go by the ruling of the East African Court of Justice. I'll make sure that the people I vote for, I'll give some to ODM, some to WIPA, and some to Jubilee. And on the UDA side, because we have almost 90% majority, the law allows us as UDA to take all the UDA members of parliament, and I'll therefore be guided, and I urge members to be guided by the geographical consideration, so that the entire community of Kenya is also in East Africa. I support.
Thank you, Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also stand in support of the report, and hasten to say that, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of consultation going around, which is healthy. I mean, let those people who are interested in representing our republic in Yala lobby and canvass
and caucus. And there's no formula for doing it, Mr. Speaker. The people will canvass in the best way that they know how to. And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the thing that we must all be very careful about, I think, is what Senator Alwale has said. That we need to take to Arusha a team of 9 members who will represent 2 things, Mr. Speaker. 1, the face of this country, and 2, Mr. Speaker, the competence levels of representation of this country. And Mr. Speaker, this is not to say that the youth should not get an opportunity. They must get an opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it will be remembered that at some point all of us were first-time senators or members of the National Assembly. So we cannot say that one of the criteria for electing people to Yala should be people who are previously served in a parliament. The Speaker, people are competent enough, they lobby enough, they canvass enough, they caucus enough. The Speaker, let the best team go to represent Kenya in Arusha. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me arise to All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the committee, that they have done a good job with the names that they have presented to both houses to be considered for the Yala Parliament. Mr. Speaker, let me say, all those who are in that list are Kenyans who can represent this country. But Mr. Speaker, it's good that as we go to vote, we consider the face of this country, we consider diversity, we consider regional balance, and we also consider competence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we consider all categories, it's also good that people who are physically challenged are considered because we have seen them in the list. The youths are considered because we have seen them in the list. And the women of this country, there is a fair number in that list. And as my SG said, it will be good if for the first time we can have majority of women in the Yala Parliament, because we have seen the women of this country are also competent, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we consider many factors, it is good that we consider that there are communities particularly that cut across the borders of the East African countries. You'll find a community like the Maasai. They are both in Tanzania and they are in Kenya. You'll find, I think the Pokot. There are many communities that cut across, and it will be good that such communities are given a chance, because as they go to East Africa, they will bring unity of purpose in all our countries, Mr. Speaker. There are aspects that affect those communities in Tanzania and affect them in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it is also good to consider equity in trade.
Honorable Senator, your time is up. Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report on the Joint Committee on the elections of members to serve in the East African Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind us that this is an extension of this Parliament. The men and women, and I'm happy to see that both coalitions have considered at least 5 women on that side, 5 women on this side. I hope that we can send many women to be able to represent us. I want to support I share the sentiments of my sister, that it would be imperative for us to look at communities that share boundaries so that we can be able to enhance cohesion between these 2 countries. The purpose of the East African Legislation Assembly is to be able to foresee a future development where this country, Mr. Speaker, that's 53 seconds. Doesn't I have a minute, yeah? For the future of the community. so that at least eventually we can have one country which will be called the East African country. And that is going to be able to help us enhance development. Mr. Speaker, some of the things that we'll be talking about in future is an introduction of future parliaments or future committees that will look at the challenges that we go through. So I want to beseech my colleagues that on Thursday, let us look at the list entirely. Let us take into consideration those issues that we've discussed here, and also plead with my colleague that at least every Kenyan has got a right. It doesn't matter. We never chose to be born by rich families or poor families. We are all Kenyans. When we come here, let us respect each other. Let us give each other an opportunity, and God will select the best person to represent us. Finally, remember that whoever we send to the East African legislation will be representing this parliament. It is an extension of this parliament, and that is why it is us, the members of parliament, who are electing our colleagues to go and represent us there. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Robert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report of the Joint Committee. And as we've looked at the report, the people selected by the Joint Committee are people representative generally, you know, under the circumstance of the country and the regions. This is an opportunity for us as Parliament to be able to really help in fine-tuning what the committee has done. The committee has done a fantastic job. And in fine-tuning what the committee has done through voting, it is very critical that we don't let down the committee, because the committee has really, there are youth in this proposal. There are, you know, women. There are people with experience. There are people without experience. And they're all there. And with that spirit of the committee, it is an opportunity for us to be able to select. Yes, the proposals has been given by different political coalitions, but as members of parliament here, allow people to lobby, as what we have gone through in terms of, you know, election. But in as far as even considering the lobbying, we should not miss the opportunity to be able to see through and make sure that we maintain the same balance as done. I rise to support. Thank you.
Senator Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also rise to support the report. And I am drawn through this report to Article 19 of the Constitution. And I'm going to read sub-Article 1 and 2. Critically, sub-Article 1 says that the Bill of Rights is an integral part of Kenya's democratic state and is the framework for social, economic, and cultural policies. Sub-Article 2 says that the purpose of recognizing and protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms is to preserve the dignity of individuals and communities and to promote social justice and the realization of the potential of all human beings. Mr. Speaker, the day we attempt to suspend these articles, whether by just words or by mere
Senator
political
Wambua, kindly
rhetoric,
consult in Lawton.
the day we attempt to suspend this article, Mr. Speaker, whether by words or political rhetorics, is the day we will condemn all our children to condemnation without relief. I am very disappointed at a senator who has spoken very passionately, profiling sons and daughters of other senior politicians in these countries with regards to this, when we know that when we talk about dynasties today, by virtue that you've gotten an opportunity to be in this house, you are also, you are a politician, and your sons and children will be treated to the same measure that you put. And therefore, I request that as we consider this election coming in on Thursday, please let us consider people on the basis of people who can advance the economic opportunities for our people in the East African market. If you talk about somebody like Winnie Odinga, you might look at the daughter of Raila Amolo Odinga. But Winnie Odinga is also a qualified Drexel University double major graduate. So please respect the Constitution. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Anyeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the report by the Joint Committee and also urge honorable members in this House that the shortlisted candidates meet the requirements, but we need to shed off the narrative of these slots being a Bureau of Employment. This House is going to be judged by citizens across the East African community countries by the kind of people we are going to send to that House. Secondly, someone like me would never have made it to this Senate hadn't I been given a platform. So I beg to request that members consider young people, women. So long as you have the capability and qualifications needed, you fit the bill to be in that House. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, and I put the question that pursuant Sir, Honorable Senators, at this juncture, I will invite the mover to reply.
Honorable Speaker, I stand here a very proud member of the Joint Select Committee of the two houses. Honorable Speaker, of note is the fact that this committee took into consideration a lot of comments that I've heard from the honorable senators on the floor. Honorable Speaker, as I stand here, I wonder about certain reference to daughters or sons or nepotism or chronism. Honorable Speaker, this was an advert that was given to Kenyans. And Honorable Speaker, we invited applicants from Kenyans, willing Kenyans who are interested. And Honorable Speaker, those are the applicants that we received. We end up with the final names that we'll be presenting to this House. But Honorable Speaker, are we saying as senators that our children or daughters or whoever they are will never go for seats that they are passionate about? Honorable Speaker, I grew up as a daughter of a teacher. And Honorable Speaker, your parents are the first mentors that you have in the society. I thus became a teacher and a number of my siblings. Are we saying as a House that the Teacher Service Commission was wrong to give me an opportunity to be a teacher? Honorable Speaker, are we saying like the Honorable Senator Boni Alwala is a doctor? Would it be wrong for his son or daughter to be a doctor? Honorable Speaker, let us give chance to willing Kenyans that have made applications and have met the requirements that were so placed. The committee took into consideration regional balance, gender and youth, and shades of opinion also have been taken care of by political parties. I reply, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 84-2, I do make a determination that this matter does not affect counties and therefore proceed to put the question. That pursuant to the provisions of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community and Rules 13.5 of the East African Legislative Assembly, election of members of the Assembly rules, the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of the East African Legislative Assembly laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 15th November 2022. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order, clerk.
Order number 10, motion, approval for the Senate to hold a morning sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Article, yes, sorry, I take that again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move a motion that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purpose of the election of the members of the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, if you recall the 2017, or rather, I think it was 2017 actually, election, we voted late into the night, and you understand, not primarily because of us as a Senate, because it's only 67 of us. So election and the counting, the whole process of ballot casting and counting doesn't take more than an hour on our side. But on the side of the National Assembly, they counted actually late into the night. And you know that the eventual winners is a joint tally of the votes that one gets in both houses. So you need to conclude our process so that our colleagues in the National Assembly can also carry, I'm sure they also have a similar motion. They'll begin voting on that day in the morning so that by as late as 3, 4, 5 o'clock or even earlier than that, we have known who are the Kenya representatives for the next 5 years to this East African Legislative Assembly. So this is very much a procedural motion, Mr. Speaker, which I want to ask Senator Boni Halwale to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this being purely a procedural mission, whose reasons have been ably justified by the leader of the minority, I wish to support the leader of the majority. You know, because of his height, I forgot that he's here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to second him and request that the House support the motion on both sides. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purposes of the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. You may now proceed, Honorable Senators, to make your contributions. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 84-2, I do make a determination that this motion does not affect counties and therefore proceed to put the question. That pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purposes of the election of members of the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, effects of upstream activities on the River Tana to the residents of the Tana Delta.
The Honorable Senator Danson Mungatana kindly move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this motion that aware that water is a fundamental resource to life, livelihood, food security, and sustainable development and economic good, which is critical for the sustainable development of the country. Further aware that the River Tana plays an important role in the lives of the communities living along its banks, including Garissa and Tana River counties, whose main economic activities are livestock keeping, farming, and fishing. Recognizing Article 43(1)(d) of the Constitution provides that every Kenyan has the right to clean and safe water in adequate quantities, noting that the residents of the Tana River County have perennially suffered from acute effects of flooding and inadequate supply of water to its residents and their livestock, cognizant that the challenge of flooding has predominantly been caused by KenGen's release of huge amounts of water from the Seven Forks dams, which combine with rainwater from the highlands. Further cognizant that the hoarding of water at the Seven Forks dams and other significant upstream activities such as irrigation and small-scale dams limits the amount of water that flows downstream through River Tana, significantly affecting agricultural activities in irrigation schemes such as Bura, Galole, and other small-scale irrigation schemes in the Tana Delta as a result of inadequate water supply to the canals that channel the water to the irrigation schemes. Concerned that limited water supply to the hinterland and irrigation schemes cause severe hunger to the residents of Tana River, death of livestock, and conflicts between farmers and herders, and that floods cause death, displacements, and other challenges like waterborne diseases such as cholera downstream at the Tana Delta. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Water, Sanitation, and Irrigation, in conjunction with the Water Resources Authority, to 1, conduct stakeholder participation before undertaking any major upstream activity, including construction of dams, before release of water during rainy season, and limiting flow of water to River Tana during the dry season. 2, develop a policy in line with the treaty, the Nile Treaty of 1959, to guarantee average annual flow of the River Tana, and 3, come up with mitigation measures to the perennial floods and water scarcity to the residents of Tana Delta. Mr. Speaker, I want to explain the basis of this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for many years, the people living downstream the River Tana have suffered and have borne the brunt of the activities that are carried upstream the River Tana. Mr. Speaker, developments have been done upstream, and we have nothing against those developments. But, Mr. Speaker, these developments have had a huge impact on the ecosystem downstream. Mr. Speaker, these developments have caused great losses to the people of the river, those who occupied the river basin in Tana River. And this, Mr. Speaker, affects both the Tana River County and also Garissa County. Mr. Speaker, as the water is moving from the highlands and it's going downstream, Mr. Speaker, the livelihoods of our people depend on what happens with this river. When I was younger, Mr. Speaker, there was flooding of this river. And when this flooding occurs, Mr. Speaker, the water then recedes. And when it recedes, it was a beautiful time of planting. Everybody used to know it is time for planting. And people would go and plant on the rich alluvial soils that have been left by the receding waters of the river. And there will be plentiful of harvest, Mr. Speaker. The Delta used to remove a lot of rice. Nobody used to talk about hunger in the basin of Tana River. Mr. Speaker, it was a time of rejoicing and celebration when the rivers would recede and the people would go to do the planting. Mr. Speaker, this has changed. The livelihoods of many people in the basin has changed completely. Mr. Speaker, the volumes of the water that is coming from upstream going into the sea has receded so much to the level that all those areas that used to be areas where alluvial soils would be deposited and then farming would take place in the traditional manner, these areas, because of the reduced volume of the water that is coming down, Mr. Speaker, the sea has started asserting itself. And when it asserts itself, Mr. Speaker, those lands, they have now become areas of salt deposits. Mr. Speaker, those farmlands have been converted into areas where salt is deposited and therefore no farming takes place. Mr. Speaker, our people have become impoverished. The whole ecosystem that used to exist, life the way it used to be free and happy, it is no longer there because now the whole system has been changed by the power of the sea. Mr. Speaker, the motion is bringing to the attention of the nation and this House, Mr. Speaker, to pronounce itself that the people who are at the bottom have as much right to this water as the people who are upstream. And Mr. Speaker, this motion tries to bring in the whole debate about participation of communities in this country. Mr. Speaker, some communities are so small that their voices are not able to be heard when big programs are being arranged. Mr. Speaker, there is no other way that they will be helped if this Senate does not pronounce itself on this matter. Mr. Speaker, dams have been created upstream. And Mr. Speaker, when it is dry season, we pay the price because there is no water downstream. And Mr. Speaker, when the rainy season begins, like it has now, and the dams are full, and then the water is excess upstream, the only thing they will tell us downstream is that you people need to move to higher ground because we are going to release waters. Mr. Speaker, KenGen in particular has been our greatest enemy downstream. They release these waters with so much energy. Mr. Speaker, you could be sleeping in your house, and then in the morning you find you are not even on your bed. Mr. Speaker, people have lost animals in their thousands, in their hundreds, because water is released, and then when it comes, the communities downstream, they pay the price the second time, that they make huge financial losses. And Mr. Speaker, the question begs, when these programs and when these developments were being done, were there stakeholder participation by communities downstream? Mr. Speaker, the answer is negative. Mr. Speaker, when these projects were being conceived, apparently for the good of the country, were there any benefits that were transferable to the communities downstream? Mr. Speaker, the answer is negative. Mr. Speaker, when these projects were being done, were there environmental impact assessments that were carried? And how were these reports done? Because, Mr. Speaker, when you look at it, none of these environmental impact assessment reports on all these major projects have mentioned the river basin, have mentioned Garissa County or Tana River County. Mr. Speaker, yet we bear the brunt of all the losses that affect us downstream. Mr. Speaker, there are many experts who have studied river ecology, who are experts in lake ecology, and they tell us that the water upstream actually belongs to the people downstream. And Mr. Speaker, if projects are being done upstream, the biggest stakeholders are the people downstream. Mr. Speaker, in none of these projects that have been done on the River Tana, have there been even a delegation of members of parliament who have been there before us, or elders from downstream who have been called to be told, you know, now your river is going to be dammed and this and that is going to happen. None has ever happened. There has been no stakeholder participation. There has been open suppression of the people, Mr. Speaker. And there's been no voice that has been given to those minorities whose lives depends on that river. Mr. Speaker, when we were growing up, there were oxbow lakes. When the river recedes, people used to do a lot of fishing. Mr. Speaker, there's no oxbow lakes anymore. When we were growing up, Mr. Speaker, the river used to move with force. People used to even use it for irrigation downstream. Mr. Speaker, now you will find the river has lost its power. You will find the river is cutting off entire villages because upstream, Mr. Speaker, the volume and the strength of the river has been cut down. And then you will find villages, Mr. Speaker, making homes of thousands of people, ancestral homes. They are cut off because the river comes, and then because it does not have power, it starts changing. It goes to the bushes, and people are left, whole communities, Mr. Speaker, that never used to know the lack of water. Whole communities that used to know that if I want to shower, I just go to the river. Now, Mr. Speaker, the river changes. And the government of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, has not been there to respond to our people. And the people have continued to be marginalized and impoverished, Mr. Speaker, and nothing has happened. So what this motion, Mr. Speaker, is asking this House is to recognize that we have a right as people who are downstream, as much as those people upstream have a right. And anything that is being done upstream will affect us downstream. And we are Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. We did not come here as refugees. We are Kenyans and we have a right and we need to be consulted. And Mr. Speaker, this Senate needs to pronounce itself very strongly. The Ministry of Water Irrigation, the Water Resources, the Water Resource Authority, it needs to start looking at the rights of the people who are downstream. So that, Mr. Speaker, everything that is being done upstream, we must be consulted. Mr. Speaker, in this motion, I have sought to bring to the attention of the House that the Anglo-Egyptian agreements that were signed by the British and the Egyptians were to the effect of protecting water sources. Mr. Speaker, 3 agreements were signed, 3 treaties were signed by the British and the colonies that were under the British at that time. And Egypt was seeking to protect, because it is a country that is downstream. The Nile River, Mr. Speaker, starts from Uganda and the areas, and then it moves through Sudan. Yeah? Not Masai Mara. Mr. Speaker, can you protect
Honorable
me?
Senator Ledama, kindly could we hear the senator in silence, please?
So, Mr. Speaker, it starts from upstream and it goes down to Sudan, then it divides the White Nile, the Blue Nile, and it goes all the way to Egypt. Mr. Speaker, Egypt in many occasions has been prepared. Mr. Speaker, Egypt in many occasions has been prepared to go to war because of its waters. And that is why to sort out these problems, there have been treaties, in fact, 3 treaties that have been signed to protect the volumes of water that are moving upstream and going downstream. Mr. Speaker, the first treaty that was signed, if I may recollect, was in 1903. And in that treaty, Mr. Speaker, Sudan at that time, which was a colony of Britain, was informed that you cannot do any economic or irrigation activities upstream because it will affect the life of Egypt downstream. And Egypt was prepared to go to war. And Mr. Speaker, that is why for a very long time, there has been no irrigation or any works that were being done because of that first treaty. Mr. Speaker, the second treaty and the third treaty, in fact, the 1959 treaty, it actually allocated the volumes of water. How much water would be, is supposed, the million of cubic waters that are supposed to be for Egypt, those ones that are supposed to be for South Sudan, or now the Sudan, and those ones that are supposed to be remaining with Uganda. And Mr. Speaker, the bulk of this water was allocated to Egypt. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the 1959 treaty, if I may be able to quote it properly, Mr. Speaker, the allocation for Egypt was 55.5 billion cubic waters, or 66% of the volumes of the River Nile. Mr. Speaker, 22% or 18.5 billion cubic waters was allocated to the other colonies. And 12%, Mr. Speaker, was provided for evaporation. But when you look at that treaty and the details within which the provisions of that treaty stated, you see that Egypt, which was the downstream state, was given the bulk or the majority of the water, Mr. Speaker. So we are saying, Mr. Speaker, as we carry out activities of upstream, the River Tana, They should remember in international law, international treaty, the water belongs to the downstream people. The people upstream must use it with that in mind. We don't have, we don't have tanks. We don't have a military of our own. We don't have war machines. But Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you today, if the people of Tana River were to be given those machines, we would cause war against any person who touches that river. That river is life. That river gives us our identification. Mr. Speaker, I, Danson Mungatana, when I was born in Ngao, Mr. Speaker, my umbilical cord, Mr. Speaker, was cut and thrown in the river. That is the connection, Mr. Speaker, that river has with the people of the River Tana. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask this Senate, Mr. Speaker, to understand that the river is our life. The river is almost something that is almost connected to some sort of deity. Mr. Speaker, our people are suffering because this river is drying up. The activities upstream are destroying the lives of the people downstream. And Mr. Speaker, the government has not changed its mind about how to treat us downstream. Mr. Speaker, when they were diverting the water of River Tana down to the basin of Athi River to create water here for Nairobi, this huge project that was being done, I remember very well that the opposition in this nation, and I hope they continue being strong, it is the opposition that rose and said, you people are going to drain the basin of the river and the people are going to die. Mr. Speaker, that project has continued and it has not even involved our people.
Honorable Senator, your time is up. You have made your case. You have truly made your case. If you have a seconder, he can second.
I beg to move, and I never finished, Mr. Speaker, but it's okay. Boni Khalwale will second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, that I am seconding this motion is not by any means by chance. Honorable Senator Mungatana created a partnership with me, with Ababu Namwamba, with the Kitobu Manyara, with Mother Karua, with the late Jacoyo Mediwo, and others for whom I cannot finish, around 10 of us. And we defined Kenya after Kenyans voted against tribalism in the year 2002, Mr. Speaker. Sorry if I've offended you, member.
What is your point of order on Honorable Senator Joyce Korir?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. This House being House of Rules and Procedures, you had ruled that 5:30 we are going to have a debate on the, and already it's past 5:30. Kindly guide us.
Very well, Senator Joyce. I will allow the seconder to finish. I'll put the question so that when you resume on this motion, it will be time for honorable senators to contribute. I think it will be neater that way. So, honorable Senator, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, without demeaning colleagues of previous parliaments, we achieved a lot through that partnership. And I want to thank the people of Tana River for having returned Mungatana to this parliament. Kenya needs him. Mungatana is the father of the Unclaimed Assets Authority. Through his brainchild, unlike today. At that time, I seconded him when he moved to create the Unclaimed Assets Authority, which emanated from that act.
Senator Boni.
I therefore compliment them.
Just proceed to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is what we call building up. I was building up. Mr. Speaker, the long and short of this motion is that the Honorable Senator is crying for the management of the ecosystem of the Tana River right from the source up to the Indian Ocean. And he has done sufficient research. He has confirmed that we don't have to, as a country, to invent the wheel. We merely follow the wheel and take cognizance of the lessons learned by Egypt, who have managed to exploit the River Nile to the extent that the people along the river course of the Nile, including us Kenyans and Ugandans and South Sudanese and Sudanese, sometimes we feel angry when we read the story of the success of Egypt. I support the senator because, Mr. Speaker, he's asking that go ahead, build the dams, but involve us. Go ahead, release water as and when you want, but console us. Go ahead and control the amount of water that is going to reach downstream, but for God's sake, consult us. Mr. Speaker, because you have bent backwards, I'll make my final point. And the final point is that the people of the Tana Delta cannot be left by this Senate, the House of Equity. They cannot be left to perpetual counting of losses. These people, they wake up to count the loss in tourism. There was a beautiful army of nature housed in the Tana River running into the ocean, because the Indian Ocean would attack the Tana Delta trying to deposit useless salt in the delta. And the Tana would come, Mr. Speaker, with its water in speed. And when the tide, you come from the coast, when the ocean is moving towards the shore, and the Tana River is coming from upstream, the two armies would meet, and hundreds of feet would go up in water. It was a sight behold. 30 years ago, when I was a young, dashing doctor, Mr. Speaker, I would go there all the way from Mombasa to see that site. It was beautiful. It's been lost, that tourism. They are counting. Mr. Speaker, they are counting loss of investment. When the delta was the fertile delta that we know, Booker Tet of Great Britain, that created Mumias Sugar Company, had actually prepared a paper. They wanted to move into the delta to create a mega sugar industry there. They are counting those losses. And finally, but not least, Mr. Speaker, they are counting the losses of their homes, their lives, and their property. May I tell this House that it was President Benjamin Franklin of the United States of America who said that poverty is not to be ashamed of. It is shame for you to be ashamed of poverty. Mungatana, you might have come from that poor place, but defend them. Be proud of that poverty so that you make it different when you'll be our president, God willing. You address it properly. I wish you good luck. And wish me good luck as well. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question. that aware that water is a fundamental resource to life, livelihood, food security, and sustainable development, and an economic good, which is critical for sustainable development of the country. Further, aware that the River Tana plays an important role in the lives of the communities living along its banks, including Garissa and Tana River counties, whose main economic activities are livestock keeping, farming, and fishing, recognizing that Article 43(1)(d) of the Constitution of Kenya provides that every Kenyan has the right to clean and safe water in adequate quantities, noting that the residents of Tana River County have perennially suffered from acute effects of flooding and inadequate supply of water to its residents and the livestock. Cognizant that the challenge of flooding has predominantly been caused by the Kenyans' release of huge amounts of water from the 7 Forks dams, which combine with rainwater from the highlands. Further, cognizant that the hoarding of water at the 7 Forks dams and other significant upstream activities such as irrigation and small-scale dams limits the amount of water that flows downstream through River Tana, significantly affecting agricultural activities in irrigation schemes such as Bura, Galole, and other small-scale irrigation schemes in the Tana Delta as a result of inadequate water supply to the canals that channel the water to the irrigation schemes, concerned that limited water supply to the hinterland and irrigation schemes cause severe hunger to the residents of Tana River, death of livestock, and conflicts between farmers and herders, and that floods cause deaths, displacements, and other challenges like waterborne diseases, such as cholera downstream at the Tana Delta. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Minister of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, in conjunction with the Water Resources Authority, WARMA, to 1, conduct stakeholder participation before undertaking any major upstream activity, including construction of dams, before the release of water during rainy season and limiting flow of water to River Tana during the dry season. 2, develop a policy in line with the Nile Treaty of 1959 to guarantee average annual flow of the River Tana. And 3, come up with mitigation measures to perennial floods and water scarcity to the residents of Tana River. Honorable Senators, debate will resume during our next sitting. At this juncture, I will call upon Senator Wambua to move his motion.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion that pursuant to Standing Order number 37, the Senate do discuss a matter of urgent national importance, being the security situation in Kitui County occasioned by ranging conflict between Kamoadas and residents of the county. The Speaker, in this country, insecurity has become a matter of serious national concern. We have all heard and listened to the newly installed Inspector General of Police vowing to tame runaway insecurity. Recently, Mr. Speaker, we were all treated to a video that went viral of a senior police officer caught on camera advocating for a ruthless approach in dealing with criminals. Mr. Speaker, A lot has been said and done about urban crime. Little has been said and done about crime in rural Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the insecurity visited on the residents of sections of Kitui County amounts to acts of terrorism. Our people continue to lose their lives, and the common denominator in this crime that is meted on the innocent souls in Kitui County and parts of this country, Mr. Speaker, is that the perpetrators are never brought to book. Yesterday, Monday, the 14th day of November, a man by the name Musea Mati from Chamalutu village in Wikiduki area of Seikuru ward was literally butchered. So, Speaker, the circumstances around the killing of this innocent man, a trader in livestock, was called by a person known to him. His name is Ali, and lured him to his death. He told him that he should come to the Amanyata to buy goats. Innocently, the victim hired a boda motorcycle and went to buy goats. Upon arriving at the Manyata, he realized that the Manyata had been vacated, and he called Ali and asked him, "Where are you? You told me to come and buy goats. Where are you?" He said, "Wait for me. In 2 minutes, I'll be with you." True to his word, in 2 minutes, Ali came back and told Mati that they had moved, and so they should go to where they had moved to so that he can see the goats and buy the goats. Hardly 2 minutes in their walk, two men emerged from the bushes. Ali disappeared. They attempted to attack the motorcycle rider, a young man, who took off. Mati was not lucky. They literally chopped off his head from his body. The Speaker, on Sunday, yesterday that incident happened in Seikuru ward. On Sunday, the neighboring Ngomeni ward these Kamoadas invaded the village and attempted to kill a man called Mutia. If the senator, the nominated senator of ODM, Madam Siengo, will get an opportunity to contribute to this motion, she will tell this house that that is actually a relative. Mutia managed to escape, but with a deep cut in the neck. On the same day in the night, the others opened fire, were shooting aimlessly to scare away villagers, and they succeeded. the entire village of Mandongoi. People, women, children, men, went to spend the night in the bush. The following day, which was yesterday, the Mandongoi Primary School did not open because kids were scattered all over the bush. Teachers have already written to be allowed to move from that region. Mr. Speaker, what I'm talking about today is not any different from the experiences of colleagues in this House representing their counties in Marsabit, in Samburu, in Taita Taveta, in Baringo, Mr. Speaker, in Tana River. Mr. Speaker, the question that these senators are asking and the question that the people of Kitui County are asking is, are we children of a lesser God? Are we being invited into this country and live at the mercy of these people that own animals that they cannot contain in their own land, on their own farms? The Speaker, it will go on record, and I want to repeat this. I've said before, because I appeared before the NCIC the other day, and I told them, and I want to repeat it here, that perhaps it is time that we should have a conversation about the effectiveness of some of these commissions that we put in place. Whether the national cohesion really is still relevant to a situation. So, Speaker, once you frame a question badly, then chances are that you'll come up with a very wrong prescription. We have never had a conflict between the people of Ukambani and the people of Somali origin. Mr. Speaker, I want that point to sink and sink well. That the Kamba community and the Somali community are not in conflict. That what problem we suffer today is a problem of camel herders who invade our farms and kill our people with impunity. But, Mr. Speaker, because this message that does not seem to be understood where it should be understood, I fear, Mr. Speaker, and I must say this on the floor of this Senate, I fear that in very few days, the conflict that we have always tried to avoid may eventually happen. And when that happens, as Speaker, it will be very, very difficult for anyone to deal with that situation. Now we have an opportunity as the Senate of the Republic of Kenya to put an end, Mr. Speaker, to this menace. We have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that people in the counties that are affected by these camel herders are protected by the law. We can't have a situation, Mr. Speaker, that a small group of people ignites national tension, which has a potential of skyrocketing into national conflict. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, in international law, and we have lawyers in this House, there is something called the responsibility to protect. That if governments are either unwilling or unable to protect their citizens, then frontline states have a moral responsibility to step in and protect suffering citizens. The Speaker, closer home, and I hope that we don't have to go that way, that the government must demonstrate ability and willingness to protect the lives and property of its citizens. If that does not happen, Mr. Speaker, can I get just 1 minute? If that does not happen, Mr. Speaker, then the only option left to citizens is to find means and ways of protecting themselves and their property. The Speaker, as I said, I hope we don't walk that way. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I move the motion and request Senator Ezena to second. I thank the Speaker.
Senator Ezena. If it's not working, you may come to the dispatch.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this motion in adding my voice. Mr. Speaker, the people of Kitui, the citizens of Kenya, are legitimate citizens of this country. And for that matter, just like the people in Samburu County and other parts of the rural marginalized parts of Kenya, deserve protection from the government. And Mr. Speaker, like the Liberian people say, that if the townspeople are happy, you have to look for their chief. It is clear that the Kenyans are not happy, and it is clear that the people in these towns are not happy. And it is also clear that the administration of the day has more to tell us about the hot air, because we have been receiving promises as the rural region of this country that security is going to be tackled with speed, but it turns out it's been nothing but hot air. Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed rampant insecurity in the city, in the capital cities and the urban centers of this country. And we have seen the administration moving with speed together with the relevant security authorities. But we are not seeing them moving with the same speed to curb the insecurity in the rural areas. Mr. Speaker, the people of Kitui cannot be butchered like flies, and neither should the people of Samburu County or Turkana County be killed like flies as if we do not have a functional administration. Mr. Speaker, the people of Kenya in the rural areas are not voting robots whose usefulness ends the very moment a new president is in office. They are citizens deserving of protection, deserving of security, and the government must prove that it can protect its citizens before sending our forces to DRC Congo. Mr. Speaker, these rural counties already face implicit forms of disadvantages, from marginalization through development, and some are dated as far back as historical injustices. Mr. Speaker, when you threaten a people's livelihood, you are threatening their extinction. And if the government has a plan to wipe off some counties and communities, they should tell us. Because most of these people affected by insecurity in the northern, northeastern of Kenya and the lower eastern are minority communities already. I reiterate that the national government and its security forces must provide citizens with sufficient security and with immediate effect. It should be a conscious effort aimed at providing security in rural areas, just like in the urban areas. And I'm challenging my colleagues on the other side of the floor, that they normally say, when a king has good counselors, his reign is peaceful. You are the people we depend on reaching directly to the chief Asla to help us join hands with our side and ensure that there is security in the rural areas equally with the same speed that they are doing in the urban centers. Mr. Speaker, conflict has been ongoing in Samburu as far as yesterday. And despite the meetings we've had with the security, cabinet secretary for security and the relevant leaders within the security system, it is clear that there is a lot of delay in providing the security for the rural Kenya, especially Samburu County. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Asla should remember that the very people that voted for him are looking out for him. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge leaders like Samson Cherargei to come out and tell us whether his interest is the coalition that he belongs to or the citizenship of this country that is meant to protect and defend as an oversight house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I second this motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 37, the Senate do adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the security situation in Kitui County as a result of the conflict between camel herders and the residents of the county. Now, Honorable Senators, Standing Order 37(6) provides that no senator speaking on this matter shall speak for more than 5 minutes. Now, looking at the time, it's 6:01 and the House is going to rise at 6:30. I rule that each senator speaking on this matter does so within 3 minutes. Honorable Senators, you may proceed to make your contributions. Senator Siengo Kalunda Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Actually, I stand to support the motion that has been moved by Senator Wambua of Kitui County. Talking of the situation in Kitui County and other parts of other rural parts of this country, the insecurity that is being witnessed is so much, and it must be worrying. Quoting the situation in Kitui County, actually the man that Senator Wambua referred to is my relative. Mutie is a brother-in-law, and he escaped death by a whisker. Mr. Speaker, sir, the situation is even worse. Am I okay? It's even worse because as we speak now, people from Mandongoi, Kasiluni, Kakuyuni, parts of Ngomeni Ward in Mwingi North, Kitui County, are spending nights in the bush. And actually, as we speak, there are about over 400 people, women and children, who are camping at Mandongoi Primary School and some in the dispensary. Because, and they have no food, actually. They have no food to eat. This morning, I had to donate food and send some people from my area or from my home to send to those people who are really suffering because they have not eaten for about 3 days. This situation is so bad that today at 2 p.m., 2 men were hijacked as they were coming from the market, and they were taken to very far distance by the camel herders. And the Kamba people from the region had to go to the bush to look for them and support them to at least to try if they could recover them or bring them back alive. Just as few minutes before I stood up, I have received a text that they have been found, and live and sound. Mr. Speaker, sir,
this situation is really worrying. And my suggestion is to actually all the security agents, and if possible, the government must take this very seriously. The other day, we had a meeting with the National Cohesion Commission, and they promised to go on the ground. I'm wondering which ground they visited. I'm wondering their visit, if it bore fruits. And if it bore fruits, what steps have been taken? Because this is very serious. As Senator Wambua has alluded, it is true, Kambas do not have any conflict with camel headers. The camel headers are the ones who are invading our lands, our people, taking their camels in our chambers, in our land, and it is rainy season, our people want to plant, they want to tend to their farms, but now they are being forced and evicted from their own homes. It is very painful, Mr. Speaker, sir. Even me, a whole senator, if I go home today, I'll be forced either to go to the bush or run away from my home because all my relatives are also spending in the bush. It is unfortunate. This must come to an end. I support. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Senator Abbas. There is a technical problem.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for the time you give me. First and foremost, I want to condone my brother's tweet. An unfortunate incident that has taken place. Mr. Speaker, as Senator Bakaturi, Honorable Wambua said, the people of Tarifa, Garissa, Kitui, and the larger Kabari area have never had problems. It is only maybe an isolated incident here and there. For many years, we used to do business together. We used to do life together. Today, if you go to Wajir, Garissa, and Mandera, the 5 angles, that's the border of Somalia. Well, there's so many people from Kitui here. They do the construction work, they do any kind of business, they do their own shopping, other shops, and they never have experienced this. Mr. Speaker, what happens is actually at times of drought. Actually, look at the general of today. The country security issue is at least. It's not working. The mic, who's speaking? Back to what it used to be. I think that this could be the problem of drought. The problem of, the list of speakers. The situation is, the food security has become now a big problem. People are not employed. There's a lot of problems that's happening in this country. And I think it's not only in the Kukambani and the system is coming. It's there in Marseille. It's there in Kukan and Kok, Marquets. It's there in every area almost. Even in Garissa and Ojia, this issue of actually school. But I think it's also, there's a school lapse. We must accept that the school system is started now. Actually became a problem. People have been up in the streets of Nairobi and neighboring areas. So, Mr. Speaker, last time we tried to sort out this issue. We have what we call the group. We look for our counterparts of our brothers in Kamukabani. We have sort of things, but we did not succeed to make proposal and to iron out these problems. This time now, that the rains are almost here. The rains have been achieved. I got to different places. There will be many people moving out and in. Mr. Speaker, those camel herders, most of them actually are not the residents of the area. They are not even residents of the Tarifa. They are not residents of Wajir or Garissa. People are moving from cross borders. the people actually, because of the ongoing drought, because of the ongoing drought, people are going to cross borders. They move from Ethiopia, they move from Somalia, they move from Tanzania, they move to, and we also move out. And as a result, because of that, there are many new people who don't understand the dynamics and the neighborhoods, people, the way people live together, and the customs of living together that come into this country, falling up with the camels, coming up with the animals, and as a result, they cause a lot of problems for us. Us to come together as leaders, we sit down, we now talk to the people, we iron out this problem, and of course we know, and everybody knows, most of these cases they are known.
Senator Abbas, your time is up. Senators, you will bear with us, the system seems to be down. I have a list of senators. This side, Senator Mazayo.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kumpatia kongole ndugu yangu Wambua, seneta wa Kitui, kwa kuweza kuleta hoja kama hii ya kwamba imekuwa mtindo sasa katika sehemu fulani fulani za nchi yetu ya Kenya ambako watu wanaleta mifugo, wanakuwa huru kuingia na kuweza kula mali ya watu ambao wamefanya bidii kupanda mashamba yao au kuweza kuweka mimea yao kwa hali nzuri. Nikisema hivi Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha leo ikiwa Kitui kwenyewe kuna njaa. Watu wenyewe ni maskini, wamefanya bidii katika mashamba yao, wameweza kupanda, alafu watu wengine sasa wanakuja na ng'ombe, wanakuja na ngamia, wanakuja na mbuzi wao, wanaingia kwa mashamba, wanaanza kulisha mashamba katika ardhi ambazo si zao na mali ni ya watu wengine, wale waliofanya bidii kupanda mimea yao. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha. Na hii inafanywa baadhi ya kwamba polisi wakiwa katika maeneo hayo wanataarifiwa kwamba watu fulani ama kutoka maeneo fulani wamekuja na mifugo, wameingia na wanaanza kukula mali ya watu katika mashamba yao waliofanya bidii na nguvu zao na mikono yao kuweza kupanda mali hiyo. Hivi juzi Bwana Spika, wiki hii hatujaimaliza Bwana Spika, unaona katika Kilifi County, katika eneo bunge la Magarini, mahali panapoitwa Kamale, kuna mashamba ya wananchi kule, kuna mashamba ya Wagiriama wamepanda mimea yao, na hao ni Mijikenda, ni watu ambao wanategemea mimea yao ndani ya mashamba yao kuishi. Leo wamepanda mahindi yao mpaka yamefika maeneo ya kwamba wanataka kutarajia kula mali yao. Sasa imetokea kwamba watu wametoka sijui ni pande gani ama pande gani, wamekuja na ng'ombe, wamekuja na ngamia, wamekuja na mifugo yao, wameingia ndani ya mashamba sasa. Alafu wakaingia ndani ya mto ambao watu wanateka maji wakinywa. Sasa wanaingia huko wakitumia nguvu. Ni watu ambao Bwana Spika, kama naweza mimi kama kiongozi wa ndani ya bunge, ningeomba nipatie kama dakika 2 kumaliza. Tafadhali.
Nitakupatia dakika 1 tu, wakati inaisha.
Nataka kumaliza nikitumia dakika 2. Tafadhali.
Si sawa kwa wengine ulida, lakini
asante, najua.
Dakika 1 tafadhali. Dakika 1.
Bwana Spika, utaona ya kwamba sasa polisi wametaarifiwa, na alafu walipoondoka Bwana Spika, wale watu wamerudi tena sasa. Hivi sasa tunavyoongea wameingia na mifugo yao maeneo ya Kamale katika ile ziwa la Dera, wameweza kuweka ile mifugo yao, ngamia wamekuwa hapo wanakunywa maji. Sasa inabidi binadamu wanakunywa maji pamoja na wanyama. ngamia wanakunywa hapo, ng'ombe wanakunywa hapo, na alafu wanaingiza hiyo mifugo yao ndani ya mashamba ya Wagiriama wanakunywa. Hii italeta vita. Hii italeta vita ambavyo serikali yenyewe itashinda kuamua, kwa sababu hatutakubali hata kidogo kuona ya kwamba watu wetu wanafanya bidii kulima, wanapanda mahindi, wanapanda mali zao, alafu sasa watu wengine wanakuja na ngamia, wanakuja na ng'ombe, wanaingia ndani wanakula mali ambayo hawakufanyia bidii. Hii Bwana Spika, inatakana serikali ichukue hatua. Tuko na seneta ambaye seneta mchapakazi anaitwa Kindiki, ambaye hivi juzi alichaguliwa kama mkuu wa mambo ya amani ndani ya Kenya. Tunasema ya kwamba Bwana Kindiki, sasa anza kazi yako. Otherwise Bwana Kindiki utaambiwa, utalaumiwa. Katika Kenya hii sasa tunaona ya kwamba watu wengine wanadharau wa Kenya wengine. Na sisi kama watu wa Kilifi hatutakubali hata kidogo kuona ya kwamba mali yetu inaharibiwa na mifugo ya watu ambao wanaleta mifugo katika mashamba yetu. Hii ni aibu sana kuona ya kwamba mtu anatoka pande ile, analeta mifugo na anakunywa, na akiulizwa wanaua hao watu ama wanapigana na hao watu. Hii ni tabia mbaya, na tena tunauliza ya kwamba sasa kama hii serikali iko very serious, na tunajua pengine serikali hii ina uwezo, ichukue hatua ya kuona ya kwamba vitu kama madhara kama hayo ambayo yanaweza kuleta vita vikuu katika Kenya sisi viweze kumalizwa. Na viweze kumalizwa kwa sababu tumechoka sasa. Tumengojea serikali ingie katikati, tumeshindwa, lakini sasa tumechoka. We are tired kuona ya kwamba sasa watu wengine watatumia mali yetu ambao sisi tuna nguvu zetu ambazo tumezifanya ndani ya mashamba kuweza wao kuja na kufaidika mahali ambapo hawafai kufaidika. Asante Bwana Spika.
Asante sana Minority Leader. Senator Mofaya, Senator Gataya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think what Honorable Wambua has presented in this House is a very sad story. It's a very pathetic story because that story has really touched quite a number of us, and it has been with us for quite some time. But I think, Honorable Speaker, we all know that we were on transition. We were transitioning from the previous government to this government. So most probably and most likely we are in some transitional gaps. So just recently we put in place a CS in the name of Professor Kidole Kideke, who is a brainchild of this House, and all senators would confirm that Kideke is an efficient CS. And the recently, Honorable Speaker, Kideke issued a very stern warning that he is going to deal ruthlessly with all the perpetrators of crime, including Kitui and any other part of this country. All the criminals will be apprehended. We endorse also a statement from Commissioner of Police, who was just recently vetted and passed by this House, that in the soonest time possible. So we are going to see some serious changes, that in the next few weeks, we are not going to listen to what is happening in Kitui, Samburu, or any other part of this country. There is a new regime, and I'm sure the people who are in control now, including the CS Interior, Professor Kideke, is equal to the task. And I'm very sure Honorable Wambua is not going to raise that issue again in this House, because that matter will be addressed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support the motion.
Thank you, Senator. He has completed his, so there's no need for point of order. Senator Olekina.
My time should start running now. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that I empathize with my brother and my sister from Mokambani, the distinguished Senator Eno Kwambua and Beth Sionga. Mr. Speaker, the issue of insecurity in a country can lead to a country collapsing. We have seen failed states, such as Somalia, and this has been as a result of insecurity in that country. Mr. Speaker, this is a country that has made tremendous progress when it comes to issues of national cohesion. We are not the only visitors in Jerusalem, Mr. Speaker. We know that drought has decimated the population in this country. Wildlife, and even now, going after human. But that case, as it may be, does not give anyone the right to be able to do away with another life. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious matter, and I do hope that the Security Council of this country, which is comprised of the President, the Cabinet Secretary, and the entire security organs, should begin taking the matter of security in this country very seriously. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, when I saw the text from the distinguished senator from Kitui, tears started oozing from my eyes because I could feel his pain. You know, citizens are reaching out to him to support. We are the ombudspersons of the citizens. We are the only people who they can reach out to. I'm now pleading to my colleagues from the other side of the aisle to reach out to the leaders of this government and let them know that unless there's security in this country will collapse. Mr. Speaker, there's various videos of people being killed. Yesterday there was a student, Mr. Speaker, from USIU who was coming back from playing basketball, and he was stabbed because of a lot of things that are happening in this country. We know that the Constitution is quite clear that no one can direct the the Inspector of Police. I think that's Article 245. The Cabinet Secretary can give policy direction. But I want to call upon the Cabinet Secretary now to sit down and speak man to man with his new team. And the first thing that I would seek that they do is to try and create synergy among the police service men and women to ensure that my minute started running late because of the system, Mr. Speaker. I must finish my sentence.
I'm sorry.
So finally, Mr. Speaker, let me just prosecute this matter because my minute was running. To create synergy, because it's a transitioning period where there's a lot of jittery. Nobody knows whether they'll still remain here. A job is a job. When you took the Bible and you sought to defend the Constitution and to defend the citizens of this country, and you are in the police service, I want to request the people in Kitui, the police commanders, to sit down and really find a way to resolve this people.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Senator Wakili.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Listening to Senator Wambua speaking about what has gone on is very painful, to say the least, Mr. Speaker. Listening to Senator Shengo, whose relative, who is also unable even to go home, is not the best. Mr. Speaker, allow me then to have a I proceed, Mr. Speaker. Allow me then to have my minutes begin to run. I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that listening to the Honorable Senator Wambua and Honorable Senator Shengo talking about what their people are going through is very painful, to say the least. It is the responsibility of every government, Mr. Speaker, to provide security. It is the least of that responsibility to ensure that that government is in office to protect its citizens from whatever kind of invasion. And where people, in this case, the late Muse Mati, Mr. Speaker, was butchered. It is not the simplest of the things to discuss in this House. This government is governed by law and order. His Excellency the President himself has not in one occasion, but very many occasions, confirmed to the citizenry that this is a government of law and order. When we have people who are invading on other people's land, whether in search of pasture or otherwise, that in itself is a breach of the law. Where is the security forces from within the places where these invaders have attacked the people? We had yesterday the CS internal security giving very hard position and also warning criminals. I believe and I wish that the warnings which was sent out yesterday went down to be put into action so that the people, not only from Kitui or the neighboring countries, are protected. Mr. Speaker, it is very painful, and I urge the security forces, I urge the government to take up the responsibility and begin to show to the people of Kitui and the neighboring countries that whoever is in breach of the law is not let off, and the full force of the law is meted on those who have been involved in these murderous acts. It does not matter whether you are looking for pasture or otherwise. Law is the law. And Mr. Speaker, I want to laud the Honorable Wambua for speaking out, because if you don't speak about it today, it will be you tomorrow, and there'll be no one to speak about. I, Mr. Speaker, support this, and I urge the government to take up the challenge and protect the citizenry of this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. And when senators are speaking, you can also donate your time, because there are many speakers and we have very few minutes. Senator Lomonen, Turkana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I support Senator Wambua for this motion. Mr. Speaker, I really have a lot to say about security. Mr. Speaker, as Senator Wambua has said, a story on the incidents of Kitui. Mr. Speaker, I am agonized. I am in pain. I lose people every day. Even yesterday night, I lost 3 people. All the time, I lose lives of the people I represent. I lose the property they have. Every time, the dependence increase. And to be so sure, Mr. Speaker, people are just taking this issue of insecurity in Kenya, they are taking it not serious. But I want to put it clearly. It is a serious issue. If we don't take it seriously, we will lose people, we will lose property, and we will have more disaster in this Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the role of every government in this world is to protect lives and property of the citizen. If the government fails to protect life and property of the citizens, what the citizens will do, they will go back to the state of nature. They will take the law by their own hands. They will kill people the way they want. They will take property the way they want. And that is what is happening in Kenya now. Not a story. Let us declare that Kenya is a failed state. People are dying. I am justifying. I'm justifying because there is no one who is supposed to lose life. There is no one who is supposed to lose property. That is the prime role of the government. People, the other thing that I want to justify, if we do ballistic audit, count the guns that are illegal guns that are owned by the citizens of Kenya. There are more than that, more than the ones that the government has. What are these guns doing? When did what did these guns accumulate? When? Where was the government? That is what we are asking. We are asking the issue of boundary. People are struggling with the boundary. The other issue, finally, the other issue.
Senator, your time is up. I apologize.
I know, Mr. Speaker, I had a lot to say.
Yeah, but we have time limit. Senators, I want to use the Speaker's discretion to increase our time for another 10 minutes so that we, because there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest. So I'm using standing order number 34-2. 10 minutes should be enough. Senator Mandango.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, I rise to support the motion by Senator Wambua of Kitui on this matter of security, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to differ with my colleagues on the issue of transition and transition gaps on matter of security, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, is only about 3 or so offices in the security sector, Mr. Speaker, that has been affected by appointments. It's only the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, the Office of the Inspector General, and the changes in the DCI, Mr. Speaker, and those changes, these officers were in service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in every county, we have the County Commander of Police, we have the County Commander of CID, we have the County Coordinator of Intelligence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is the failure of the public officers to take their duty seriously, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we are losing lives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, the officers responsible must be taken to task. Mr. Speaker, how will you explain a population migrating into a region unchecked, Mr. Speaker, carrying weapons in broad daylight, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I am tempted to agree with the Senator for Turkana that there is a failure in the security system in this country, but not a failure of the state, Mr. Speaker, as the Senator for Turkana would like to make us believe. Mr. Speaker, I would want to urge the security officers responsible. 1, to mop up all the illegal guns that are being carried by others. Mr. Speaker, we know and understand that there is drought and famine ravaging this country, Mr. Speaker, and those others, Mr. Speaker, have legitimate reason to try and look for pasture. But, Mr. Speaker, this is not something new. Communities have been moving to other areas and requesting the host communities, Mr. Speaker, to support them for pasture. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware the residents of Turkana have moved to Uganda, Mr. Speaker, and have been welcomed because of drought to have their livestock, Mr. Speaker. The same can be done, but we cannot protect criminals in the name of transition, Mr. Speaker. The Cabinet Secretary must wake up and take immediate action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Tobiko Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion by Senator Enoch Wambua. And Mr. Speaker, this is really a matter of national importance. Mr. Speaker, we have been seeing the insecurity in Kitui and in all other counties, but particularly in Kitui because of the camel herders who have moved into people's lands and have had complete disregard of life and property in those areas, Mr. Speaker. And we arise to say, Mr. Speaker, that the residents of Kitui and all other counties deserve protection and to be given protection by the police force, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is drought, which has also escalated insecurity. I know there is livestock from Kajiado that is in Kitui right now. But we are sensitive that we are moving into people's lands. And our people are requesting a good stay from the locals in that place, and they have been allowed to graze. We urge the camel herders to do the same, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say the insecurity is not only localized in Kitui. I was with the honorable member of Laikipia North in the, at lunch hour, Mr. Speaker. She's hosting 200 women who are IDPs because of insecurity, Mr. Speaker. I was with the Honorable Naisula Lesuda of Samburu West. They are crying of insecurity, Mr. Speaker. Our police forces must wake up because they are sleeping on the job, Mr. Speaker. And this is not about transition, Mr. Speaker. And I would also say that the honorable senators must desist from the minority side to try and politicize this matter, because it is not politics, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even in the urban centers, we are having issues of insecurity in Nairobi, in Kitengela, in Rongai, Mr. Speaker. The police force must wake up. They are not Kenya Kwanza police, police personnel, Mr. Speaker. It is Kenyans who must wake up to do their job and protect others, and they must be taken to account. It's not a Kenya Kwanza issue, Mr. Speaker. We can say this insecurity has been there even just the other day when we had Uhuru Kenyatta as the president, Mr. Speaker. So it is not political and must not be politicized, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we arise to say it is important that Kenyans are protected, Mr. Speaker, at all fronts, in towns and in the rural areas, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Joyce Korir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I would also want to stand with my colleague, Honorable Senator Wambua, on this very, very emotive issue where there are a lot of insecurity in his county. And not only his county, but I can say a number of places within this country. Honorable Speaker, I think it's high time that we stop this PR issue of blame games. It's time to step up and address this issue of insecurity in all these regions, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that where there is insecurity, there is no development. Where there is insecurity, there is no peace. There is nothing that is going on. And unless the government step up and address this, Honorable Speaker, this might cause another problem in the entire country. So, Honorable Speaker, when I was listening to the Honorable Senator, the way he was explaining the happenings, the way the videos are going viral, it's really devastating, not only to us as the leaders, even the members of the public. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that we support and we urge the Honorable CS in charge of security to come out and address this issue. We have the security officers all over. We have the county commissioners and the so forth, the security team. It's a high time that even before we tax the committee on security, the committee on cohesion, to move to the ground and get the issues that are affecting these people, it's high time that they also give us a report, a comprehensive report on what is really happening on those grounds, Honorable Speaker. Otherwise, I support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Montet Betty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also rise to support the motion brought by the Senator of Kitui. Mr. Speaker, it is so sad that the issue of Kitui has been in this House, I think, for the third time. It is so sad that we continue to have people lose their lives. Mr. Speaker, these people are not camel headers. They are actually criminals. And they are not on horses. They are actually headers, so they're around there. We have security teams, we have county security teams, and I wonder what happens that we've never had anybody brought to book that this is what they've done, because they're doing it and they're going nowhere. They harass people from one village, from one ward to another. These are criminals who actually should be dealt with. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, if we continue losing lives and losing hope as Kenyans, things are not going to be the same. So I want to support the senator and say that these things should be brought to a stop. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll have the last two speakers. Senator Tabitha Mutinda, and then followed by Senator Seki, because he's in the Security Committee, and we finish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to support this motion from my brother, Senator Enoch Wambua. Kitui is my home, and I want to inform this House, Mr. Speaker, that Kitui people are very hardworking people. It saddens me that, as my colleagues have mentioned, that this issue is a recurrent issue. It's an issue that has been brought to this House before. The President, His Excellency, was in Kitui a few weeks ago, and looked into this issue, and he has put his house in order. We have the CS, Kindiki, Professor, who we believe is up to task. And we ask him, Senate, to be able to give a long-term solution to this particular issue. We are tired of our people in Kitui losing lives. We are tired of our people in Kitui abandoning their homes that they have worked so hard to put in place at this particular time. Properties have been lost. The tension is still high. We do not want, Mr. Speaker, to give people opportunities whereby intertribal clashes are going to start. We ask the government to be on the front line and be able to address this issue, not only in Kitui, even in other parts of this country. Every Kenyan deserves to be in a secure environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion from Senator Wambua on this matter of insecurity, particularly on the issue of the camels that are coming to his county. I know this issue seriously can be a very emotive issue, because I know from history the Kamba community are very hardworking, as one of the senators alluded to. They do a lot of cultivation, a lot of, they have their own parcels of land. They paddock and prepare a good pasture for their own animals. That is what I know, because they are my neighbors. And it will be very discouraging to have people coming to intrude into their land, and again, to butcher all the owners of this land. And I think that is very discouraging. I know the Committee on Security has been having this issue quite often. And I know there are quite a number of steps that we are taking up in the Security Committee through the National Security IG, the CS himself, we have even booked an appointment with the CS as a security committee. But I think it is very important that Kenyans must understand the properties, the importance of having properties, owners' properties. It is very important, because we know people will be destabilized by this kind of, destruction of people's property. So I think we need to understand that there are a lot of things that comes in, particularly the issue of school. The schools are being affected. Families are, they have insecurity. There are a lot of fear in between families by these killers. And that is very, 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 very bad. We want to come against this issue and make sure that the minister in charge of security need to put this issue into rest. We want to give the Minister for Internal Security to come openly on the public, on the public domain, that what is the processes the government is putting to make sure that these issues of insecurity in Kitui, in Samburu, Turkana, is put on rest. Otherwise, thank you so much. I think it is very important that this assembly follow up this matter quite well. Otherwise, thank you, Bwana Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Seki. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:44 p.m., time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 16th November 2022 at 2:30 p.m.